Good morning and welcome to another of our Emsi webinars that look at how colleges using LMI, particularly our career coach product around marketing and recruitment. I'm really delighted this morning to be joined by Claire Heywood, Deputy Principal, and Hannah Griffiths, Head of Sales and Marketing at Heart of Worcestershire College. So I welcome both of those and good morning. So I've got a few slides to go through before we hand over to Claire and Hannah. Just a quick reminder to attendees that if you've got any questions or you want to make any comments or chat, there is the question and chat function that I'll be keeping an eye on. And obviously at the end of the presentation, you will be getting the copies of the slides and the video as well. And thank you for attending our webinars again, so really appreciate that. So I'm just a quick reminder, I'm Ben Owen, I'm the Account Director for Education and Skills, predominantly look after our FE clients in the north of England. So I'm really pleased to be hosting another one of these webinars and pleased that you've joined us this morning. Just a quick reminder about Emsi and who we are. So our global mission is to use our labour market data to inform and connect people, education, employers within the context of our regional and national economies. And obviously in the middle of that Venn diagram, we've got skills, and that is the most probably relevant topic at the minute, both for 16 to 18 recruitment, in terms of making sure that those are aligned through Gatsby, but also particularly the adult market, which will be very fluid as we move forward, particularly around recovery from COVID. So just a couple of quick slides around sort of career coach and the drivers around sort of Emsi's LMI in general. You know, this is your typical learner, whether that be like a 16 to 18 or an adult. These tend to be the sort of four key drivers when someone's thinking about what they're going to be doing in terms of moving, if they're leaving school or if they decided to retrain or upskill. They're obviously wanting to know what that job market looks like, you know, what type of jobs they are, what level of education they'll need, what ultimately how much they'll earn, you know, in terms of salary, and how much could they earn depending on the level of education. What are the companies in the area that's advertising at the minute? How do they apply for these jobs? How do they prepare for these jobs, and what type of candidate they're looking for? What you're like as a provider, you know, what courses are you doing at the minute? How does that link to where that person wants to go? And ultimately, how will these courses help them progress throughout their career? And finally, I think probably the most relevant one currently is skills. So if you're thinking about that first bullet point there, what skills do I already have? Particularly around the adult market moving forward, it'll particularly be a need for colleges to think about probably shorter qualifications. You know, adults that may be at risk of redundancy will come into college or come into a potential new career with a set of skills already, so they might not necessarily need to do a full qualification. So I think that's a really important first point, what skills they already have, and ultimately what skills are employers wanting, and how does that course deliver those skills. Moving on then, so this is our career coach portal. So we now have 3 different iterations of the career coach portal available to customers. We have the actual portal itself, we have our API integration through college's website, and then we've got our plugin tool, the latest newest tool as part of the sort of career coach suite of platforms that are available. So you can see here sort of 3 main things around careers assessment, browsing careers, and obviously browsing courses, the important thing, the courses that you do, how they link to that local job market, that local skills demand. Just quickly take you through each sort of element of this. So the careers assessment element of it, I think, is really, really important, because it's something that you can do as a sort of short, sharp exercise as part of online school engagement or sort of face-to-face school engagement. It's quite a nice little way of people coming in, understanding what they like to do and how that's translated into skills and traits that they already have and that they want to acquire. And you can see there, you sort of brought down this sort of 3 different types of survey, and obviously the more questions you answer, the more detailed the response is. From personal experience, I would look at using the sort of quick start assessment, particularly around like the initial engagement side of students, whether that be young people or adults. The standard assessment I would use as part of the recruitment and sort of induction activities, and the detailed assessment really is in that pre-day 42 type of induction activity and moving into the actual careers and tutorial provision. The other part of career coach that we have is our API. So this is an example here, Sheffield College. They've done a fantastic job of embedding our LMI information, and it's sort of powered through their website. So you can see where it says search by career, subject area, interest, level of study. What that is our LMI filtering into their website, so someone can look in and say, I want to do something digital. It'll look at the keywords and sort of pull that through. So that's a really good use of our API. And again, we've got lots and lots of colleges that are doing this particularly well. And then the final bit, the new sort of side of it is our plugin. So it's effectively a widget builder. So you create little widgets which can be used either on your website as an alternative to API. If you don't want to go down the full route of API integration, you can put these widgets on your content management system on your website. The other thing that I quite like about this is it can be used within your VLE. So if you've got Moodle or Canvas or Teams or Google, if you created internal careers pages, and particularly thinking about the opportunities around sort of progression from level 2 to 3 at the minute in particular, I think this is a really good tool to get into that internal careers offer, that internal VLE offer. You can create little widgets for the whole curriculum department or for each level of course, which is quite a nice little addition. And then finally, just before I hand over to Claire and Hannah, just give you a quick update that we've updated our skills data within the actual portal itself. So you've got access to a lot more skills data about a particular job. So you can see here I've gone into the career section of Heart of Worcestershire's portal. I've selected business and financial project management jobs. And then if you look at the about section that's highlighted, historically you'd have a little bit about skills information. What we've now done is brought greater synergy between our career coach product and our analyst product. So we've got hard skills and soft skills. They align quite nicely in terms of what you would see within our job post analytics, our JPA report. And I think quite like this is a real big step forward, particularly when you're thinking about transferable skills for students as well. So they're coming in, they're learning these different types of skills, as well as obviously getting professional competency through the delivery that you're doing both in the actual college and work experience. But I think it's a really nice update. So that's a little update from me in terms of where we're at and the things that we're doing as a company. I'm now really delighted to be handing over to Claire and Hannah, and they'll now be talking through their presentation about what Hal was to do, how they embed LMI in their sort of college operations. So over to you, Claire and Hannah.
Good morning, everybody. So my name's Claire Heywood. I'm a Deputy Principal at Heart of Worcestershire College, or Hal College as we know it, so it's quicker to say. And we've just been asked by Ben and Emsi to talk today about our experience of working with the labour market insight that we do with Emsi. And it's really the starting point for us was really for me, I suppose, a few years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, when I heard somebody in MIS team talk about Emsi, and we'd got this access to this data, and nobody really knew what to do with it because the MIS teams sort of saw it as a data thing, so it's theirs, but nobody was talking to the curriculum teams. And so we ended up having this staff session, CPD session, going back quite a way now, and I think we all walked away sort of fairly clueless about, okay, we've got this huge thing, what do we do with it? So our history with Emsi goes back probably 4 or 5 years. Ben, could you move on to the first slide, please? Thank you. So for us, our starting point was really thinking about who are we, what's our purpose, and the varying demands upon us as an organisation. And we speak as Hal College because we'd merged from 2 colleges in 2014. Pre-area review mergers, this was just something we decided to do in the county and create 1 college, which, as it turned out, was fortuitous. But we really took a lot of time to think about, you know, what our purpose is, what's our role in the community, and I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment with various things like the white paper, accelerators, and so on and so forth. So our starting point was really to think about this plethora of demand on us, and we know that we're not unique in that, and making sure that we were staying true to our core values. So what's our purpose, who are we, and who do we exist for, really? And then how do we navigate that landscape for ourselves, partners, our community, and our learners? Ben, if you could move on. So there's a really good book about the changing role of education by Julie Wilson. I think it's in the notes for the slide pack that you'll get, so it's worth having a look at that. And naysayers will always say that change has always happened, so that's not, that's change isn't new, it's always happening, and it's true. Change has always happened, but probably what's different now is that the pace of change with technology and the advancements of that. So we've all been to the supermarket and spotted those awful self-service things. Well, I think they're awful. They always argue with me. Where you have to beep yourself through. The reality of that is there are less jobs in that supermarket. That's automation creeping in, and we see it across every sector, and that's not going to disappear. And so what we're saying here in this slide is to have a think about the fact that we've now got the world's largest taxi firm, but it owns no cars. We've got the world's largest publisher, but it has no authors that it pays. And we've got the world's largest film distributor that owns no cinemas. So these, very well-known companies are incredibly rich and powerful, but actually they don't own the traditional resource that they used to own. And so the way that technology is influencing our lives is really altering that, and it's really disrupting that market. And so the point I'm making here is that change is happening, and that role of technology and automation in a skills sense is really starting to have a bigger impact, even down through to the small and medium-sized enterprises that we all work with. So it's looking at those wider 21st century skills for learners pre and on programme. And for us, therefore, we've been able to make good use of business case reports, course vision, job posting analytics, which specifically is around in-demand skills, both hard skills and those common skills that are useful across various programs, and support learners to make transitions around as they do. And then for us in the full Analyst tool that we use, it's been useful to look at input-output models as well, particularly in the scrutiny of things like intent. If you could move on, please. So there's an awful lot of white noise about how we should achieve our purpose. We're in competition with one another as colleges. Nope, hang on, now we're collaborating. We must listen to the learner voice. Nope, now we need to listen to the employer voice. And there's an interesting debate around that about which voice should be the loudest on a board. Is it employer-led provision, or is it demand-led, and who drives that demand? It's all very well saying we've got X need in this area, but if that isn't an attractive career route for young people, why should they choose it? So there's a pushback there with employers. Destinations for roles that are not possibly there yet, or they're not local. Meeting local needs is a demand on us, but offering learner choice, is this always possible? So, for example, where we are in Worcestershire, there aren't an awful lot of performing arts roles, but there is a demand, not the biggest demand in the country, but there is a demand for performing arts courses. So should we not offer those because there isn't a local role? Similarly, we've all heard the criticisms around hairdressing students. So we've got classic examples of policy opposition to that, and at worst, possibly policy direction. And we seem to have moved from education to skills. And there is a subtle but important difference there, and it's much more than a slogan change. Next slide, please, Ben. So thinking about all of that and who we are and what we're trying to achieve, we also have a ton of data available to us, listed on that slide there. And so we ended up in a situation where we had this classic analysis paralysis of, where do we start? How do we synthesize all of that down and help and use that data to help us work out what it is we're going to offer, who we offer it to, and how we deliver that. And so really for us, if you could move on again, Ben, we were very much seeking some clarity through that. And this is where we became very much more engaged with the Emsi products that we'd bought several years ago, but had never really used. And in particular for us, that started with Analyst, which we've now got the FE Analyst tool that's very, very useful. And we were already using Career Coach, although not as proactively as we are now. We started off with one user at the beginning, not an analyst, me. We started working with the curriculum teams, but it was hard to get those teams to find the time to dive into Analyst, which is why FE Analyst is great, because it's much more accessible for busy managers and leaders to do it justice. And this has enabled us to get curriculum leaders genuinely interested, because they can see the wood for the trees. And it doesn't always lead us to making massive changes. It could be very much incremental, such as module alterations, aligning to job postings and skill demands, but also it's got some useful data in terms of identifying those common skills within sector areas. That's really powerful and really useful actually for maths and English as well. Could you move on, Ben? I have to credit this particular image on the slide to Emsi themselves. I've nicked it from a previous webinar that they've delivered. But really, this is our approach to using the data. We're using the LMI data with various sources. We're looking at those market needs, and those markets are employer needs, but it's also what learners are sort of commonly applying for, and then that's informing our strategic and curriculum planning. And we're sort of constantly doing that, as I know most colleges or all colleges are doing all the time. So this is how we're just using those tools moving forward, really, and how that's influencing what we're thinking about and how we're adapting those curriculum changes in terms of the offer, but also increasingly post-pandemic, the delivery model and the delivery mode. Thanks, Ben. So this is where we've got what we're saying is a real power couple, which is where the marketing meets the data. And so we've got this data that's now synthesized down for us, and we're using it regularly throughout our curriculum planning processes. We're using it to inform markets in terms of areas that we may not have thought about, or we may not have gone into depth enough or refreshed enough. And so that's really helping us on that end of things in terms of influencing those curriculum decisions and that curriculum planning. But also we need to use it in terms of how we're informing our customer. So at that point, I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Hannah.
Thank you, Claire. So hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm Head of Marketing and Sales at Hal College. Excuse me. So as Claire said, we've been working with Emsi for a few years now. My role within the marketing team and working alongside my colleagues, we've kind of spent the last 12 months really getting our heads around Emsi, getting our heads around Analyst, getting our heads around the data. And as we said, looking at ways that we can portray this information to our target audiences. So to our students primarily, to parents, and making sure they understand it, and to our career advisors and our schools as well. So if I can have the next slide, please, Ben. Thank you. I've been dying to do that as Chris Whitty. So as you'll see, this is the evolution of our printed prospectus. So on the left, we've got our old prospectus, which was our 2021 edition, which included our top careers and aspirational salaries. Now, this is the information we've included for quite a few years. We've had it on various literature across the college, roller banners for open events, etc. But it's really, really basic. So it kind of just showed an aspirational career, a starting salary, and obviously what salary they could work up to. So you'll see with this one, we've got software developer and network engineer. It was great information. Students really appreciated it. They liked to see it, but we felt it wasn't enough. And it wasn't given the bigger picture, particularly for the region. So moving on to the right-hand side, this is our 21-22 edition, so the current edition of our prospectus. And as you'll see, we've delved a lot more into the Emsi data. So we're extracting more detailed regional information, particularly around job growth within the Worcestershire County. Any decline, we've been really realistic with students that, you know, it's not always positive. The salaries, so we're looking from an average salary, we're still looking at starting from and still looking at up to, because obviously we think it's really important they've got something to aspire to. And then alongside that, we decided to include the education level, because it gave a good, well-rounded insight into the whole programme for students, particularly as we also at the college we have HE provision as well. So it showed how they could progress through the different levels to hopefully earn those aspirational salaries. If I can have the next slide, please, Ben. Thank you very much. So these are just a few more examples of our course pages. For context, the size of our prospectus this year is A4 in height and The width is approximately two-thirds of A4. So it's quite a long, thin prospectus. We've gone for a completely different shape to a lot of organisations in the hopes that it kind of stands out. But it's also given us the opportunity to increase the amount of information that we've put in there, particularly around this Emsi data. So as you'll see, we've got different ones here. So this is creative arts, this is sport, and this is health and social care and early years. And as I said, we've focused on for every single area, showcasing different job roles, the growth, the decline, the salaries, and the education levels. Feedback from schools, obviously, due to the pandemic, we've not really had as much face-to-face contact with our schools as we normally would, and we've not had the opportunity to spend the time with them at careers fairs, parents' evenings, different events, to kind of really sell this part of our prospectus and to go through it with them in person. But our feedback from schools, career advisors and students has been really, really positive. They've said that it's been great to have an insight into the working world. It's been really good for realistic and informative data that they can relate to and that students can aspire to. You know, it's not just a case of, because we do a performing arts course, we said that there's going to be performing arts jobs available, or we've said there's going to be jobs within fitness industry. They can actually see the data for themselves. And not only showing the amount of jobs, but also the different roles that are relevant to this area. So if I can have the next slide as well, please. Thank you, Ben. So yeah, you'll see this a little bit more through the next few slides. So as well as the prospectus, we decided to go big with this, and after the feedback we'd had, we decided to take it digital. So we took on a new project. My team came up with this called Future Fridays, and this went across all of our social media platforms. So particularly focusing on Instagram with a 10-image carousel. Obviously, I've only put 8 on your screen for now, just so you can obviously see this in more detail. But the primary objective from this was to showcase the data to students, parents, carers, and also to employers as well. Because as I said, we put this on Instagram primarily, but we also put it across Facebook, we put it across Twitter, and we put it across LinkedIn as well. And it was great to, as we said, adhere to the Gatsby benchmark and giving those students and parents access to high quality information about their future study options and labour market opportunities. So alongside the prospectus, it gave us the opportunity to expand on the job roles we'd highlighted. So we could include a wider scope of jobs and roles in related fields that may not necessarily be the first thing that comes to mind. So with business, if we look at the Emsi data and we pull the reports down, the top areas in our region were primarily sales roles, which to a 16-year-old isn't necessarily that appealing, but we wanted to open this up wider and showcase the magnitude of roles that fall under the business kind of umbrella. So we've got everything from property to HR to accountancy to marketing. I haven't got the example with me today, but likewise in hair and beauty, we also wanted to showcase other areas. So things where they could use those softer skills that they're learning within their course, so customer service roles, other areas. I think with ours it came up with some care roles as well, so ways that they could branch out, that they weren't just by doing a vocational course kind of pigeonholing themselves into one area. If I can have the next slide, please. So yeah, this one is for creative arts and media. So just to kind of show you another example. Again, this goes back to what I said earlier. So we wanted to show the good, the really good, but then obviously the not so good, and to be really realistic with students. So we can see from this one, roles within TV, video and audio engineers within Worcestershire has a -2% change during the next 5 years. However, we are able to say there's a 15% growth within the graphic design area. This information has been particularly useful with parents. What we've experienced firsthand at career events, particularly within kind of the creative arts industries, is that they don't necessarily see those as the safest jobs for their child. Particularly, you know, we've had students that go, I really want to be an artist, and they're like, we think you should have a backup. But what we're able to do is we're able to work with that student, and we're able to align that there is actual job growth and opportunities. Obviously, we can't guarantee that they're going to be successful, they're going to hit these salaries, etc. But it's taken on board in a more serious and realistic way by the parents and the students. And as I said, it gives them something to aspire to. The result of this, all of this was organic, so we did no paid for advertising for our Future Fridays. Obviously, it was the first time we'd ever done this, so we kind of went into it a little bit blind, but it turned out to be a really, really good opportunity for us. So engagement levels were initially really high. It kind of teetered off towards the end of the campaign, and we ran this from September up until Christmas. And we were doing this every single Friday, so we think lessons learned for us is maybe can we pad it out a bit, so every couple of weeks. Was it a bit too much information for parents, for students? But as I said, it's the first instance of the campaign, so we've got no comparable data from previous years. Similarly to the prospectus though, the feedback has been extremely positive. With the digital stuff more so, we've had a lot of really good feedback from external organisations, so businesses that we work with, our networks on LinkedIn, etc. Commenting on how positive it is to see the portrayal of that data, particularly for the Worcestershire area. You know, we've got great relationships with the LEP, with the council, and they're really, really happy and want to collaborate with us on this to show the opportunities that are available within the county. And obviously from our side, it's very aesthetically pleasing. We're really pleased with how it looked. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way it could ever be done. This is purely the way that we did it. And moving forward, we are looking at ways that we can adapt this and restart a new campaign for the next academic year, making sure that it suits our students and prospective students and parents' needs and desires. So what information is it that they want? So if I can have the next slide, please, Ben. So yeah, it's our work in progress now. So we're not quite smashing up any keyboards just yet, but we are now moving on to look at the next step for the college. And with that will be the integration of Emsi data within our website. So as Claire and Ben explained, we do use Career Coach already within our website pages, but we're looking at now including the Emsi data on each course page, which will show potential careers, salaries, job openings, and those education levels that they need to go through or potentially go through to get these careers. And we're hoping to launch that this summer. We're then hoping to obviously continue with our partnerships, so sharing and collaborating with our network of schools and career advisors to use this data to help students make those informed choices. You know, how can we adapt? How can we help them? And making sure that they know they have access to a career coach and obviously this data that will be shown on each page of our website. And it's pushing that data in front of them in as many appealing, succinct and interesting ways as possible. So yeah, that is all from me. So I think we have time for some questions if there's anything, Ben.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you very much, Claire. It's really, really interesting. Just apologies to colleagues that are online. Obviously, my screen share didn't work. So what I will just do before we take any questions, I'm sure people are interested just in the new section there, is just point out where the new skills data is, which I think I've got a few questions around that, because obviously, apologies again, my screen share didn't seem to be working properly. So when you go into the actual portal itself, you go into the career section, search for a career. Once you've selected a career, you go in the about section there, and then you've got underneath, you've got the hard and soft skills now that replicate what we've said, you know, in terms of our analyst and job post analytics report, which Hannah and Claire have very nicely articulated why that's important to a college moving forward, and particularly around sort of meeting the Gatsby benchmarks, etc. So apologies for the screen share. I'll just go back to the question side. So I've not actually got any questions other than obviously the slide share. I mean, from my perspective, if you don't mind, Claire and Hannah, I've just a couple of questions / observations. I really love the perspective. I think it's one of, having worked in colleges for a long time, I think it's one of the nicer uses of our data in terms of printed press and as well as the social media side of it. I know you said it's new this year, but have you started to see any sort of positive move towards like applications or maybe like conversions or retention? Is that the aim that you wanted to look at in terms of obviously meeting Gatsby 2, which is the introduction to LMI, Gatsby 4, the link between curriculum and local jobs? Is the aspiration around some of this work, Hannah, looking at trying to increase your sort of day 42 retention, increase your progression to sort of higher levels? Is that the intention of this?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely, like we're saying, having that data from Emsi that not only shows obviously the jobs and the salaries, which are the big numbers that the students really want to see, but also those education levels. And for us, it's helping us to cross-sell into our other areas. So, you know, we've got courses starting from level 1 right up until level 7. And it's enabling us to do that, like we say, retain them from the moment they start with us right through to graduation, would be the big hope for us.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of helping to smash up some of those stereotypes, particularly at the moment. So careers in arts, you know, it's under attack a little bit, isn't it? For, you know, from parents and those viewpoints. You know, and also perhaps a little bit at the moment hospitality, because of what's happened. Really, people react to that stuff. So I think it's really valuable in terms of that broader education piece, in terms of educating parents as well, and schools actually. I wouldn't say we've got any hard data yet, but I would say that performing arts, we have seen a bit of an uptick actually for the first year in quite a few years, and that isn't just, you know, to do with demographic lift or anything like that. So I think that's been quite interesting, and I think course choices are perhaps a bit more accurate for some learners in terms of where they're landing. So we do have some students that will land quite generically on, I mean, public services is a classic. I sort of want to go in this area, but I don't know what I want to do, and I think that's becoming more informed as a result. But it's too early days for us to say, you know, we did X and Y has been the outcome of that. I think for us, it's been the biggest driver has been around, you know, making sure that learners and their parents are as well informed as they can be, because we've got a lot of sixth forms around us, whether they be in schools or standalone sixth forms. And so what we see a lot of as a college are 17-year-olds who went the A-level route. They didn't necessarily want to, but mum and dad wanted them to, and then they fall away. And we were picking up a lot of 17-year-olds. So we're just wanting to be part of the solution in trying to guide that decision-making process better. And if the A-levels are the right route to go, then great. But, you know, be informed about that, make informed decisions. And it's sort of incidentally, it's worth me adding that we don't offer A-levels at our college. We are purely a vocational technical college.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point, isn't it? And I think one point that I picked up on around Hannah's session as well, Claire, which I thought was really useful, was around the transferable skills piece, which I'm sure you're seeing that as a real opportunity moving forward. And like you say, not pigeonholing people just because they choose one course, they'll be acquiring a set of skills. And I found that really interesting, because hairdressing is one, again, where the sector gets quite a bit of negative press around the volume of hairdressing students, but actually I think Hannah articulated really well around all the different type of roles that would be available. So I think that's quite an important piece of the work that you're doing at the minute, which is you're not pigeonholed by your course choice, like you've said, you're not pigeonholed by choosing A levels incorrectly. There's always other courses for you to choose in terms of your career path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, hairdressing is a classic one, isn't it, to try and sort of combat the, you know, the sort of stereotypes of things. But, you know, I think you could also say, you know, how many of us sitting here today are working in the area that which we did our degree in. Now, there may be some people, but I'm sure there'll be some random degrees out there as well. And I think it doesn't always follow, does it, that you end up in a job that you set out to, and that's okay because you pick up all these other skills along the way. I think the other thing to add really is with the common skills, what's been really powerful for us is pre-pandemic, we have always done an element of blended learning in our curriculum for all level 2, level 3 students. For those that don't know, we manage the blended learning consortium, so I'm not plugging that, but what I'm saying is we've always had that as an element of our delivery. And so what we've been able to do, and we're sort of really cranking this up now, is use this data to help us plan that work better so that it better aligns to those 21st century skills of collaboration, communication, etc. Because actually we can show the direct impact that has for a particular industry, and therefore that makes that element of their curriculum even more relevant to them than it was before. So it's not just got the vocational context, but actually they can see that it's also developing those wider skills that they're going to need, even if they decide to quit the industry and go and do something completely different.
And don't apologise. Feel free to plug in my web. It's a great resource for people that are not yet using it. And I think you're right. I think the skills challenge for colleges, and like I was saying in my section before I handed over, I think one of the key things moving forward for colleges will be around, you've talked around how the college uses the data, both career coach and analyst, to plan. I think there's going to be a need of colleges to be a bit more dynamic in planning, particularly around the adult market, and it won't always be a fixed out of the box qualification for some of these adults that potentially are at risk of redundancy or economic displacement as a result of COVID. It might be short, sharp qualifications because we've already got a section of skills that partly meets the need of another sector, isn't it? So I think it's about that, like you said, that fluidity to be part of planning.
Absolutely, and I think the various bits of the white paper are offering an opportunity for that. I mean, the parts of it that I would critique, but there's an opportunity as well for us to potentially disrupt that market a little bit, isn't it? And say, you know, there isn't a pre-existing qual in this, but here's some evidence that there's an absolute need for that particular market. And so I think using the data can really help guide your hand on where to go with that. Otherwise, we all become busy idiots because we're all trying to do everything. And actually, maybe the trick here is that we all specialize a little bit in terms of things that actually locally, this is what's needed and this is what our employers are asking for, and is where the greatest demand is. So I think the data can really be powerful in that.
Agreed. It's been absolutely fascinating listening to both yourself, Claire, and Hannah this morning. I think fantastic things happening at Worcestershire College. Definitely, you know, if anyone's got any questions, you know, we've got Hannah and Claire's email there, and obviously we will be sending the slides out, and we will be sending the copies of the presentation. Again, apologies for my screen sharing error at the start of my presentation, but again, you'll get the full copy of slides. There's no more questions, so I just take this opportunity to thank both yourself, Claire and Hannah. I know how busy it is at the minute, particularly, like I say, getting ready for assessed grades and recruitment and progression. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be part of this morning. It's been an absolutely fantastic session, so thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. It's great to join you.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, thank you
very much. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye.
Bye.